A big hello and welcome to all our viewers to another episode of Cricket Pundits. I've lost track of how many episodes we've done. We started with the IPL, moved to the India-Australia ODI series, and then move to the T20I series. But now it's time for us to turn our attention to the grand old format of cricket, Test cricket, as India and Australia prepare to embark upon the first of 4 Test matches that takes place at the Adelaide Oval tomorrow. And joining me are two pundits. Who are here to review this match with me, Mandira Alwani and Ayaz Memon. Mandira, Ayaz, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anubhav.
Ayaz, let's cut straight to the chase. Your initial reaction to the selection decisions, Shaw in for Gill and Saha in for Pant?
Well, I must confess that Shaw's inclusion is a bit of a surprise for me. Not because he's not talented, but because he just looked, just playing too many loose strokes, not having done well even in the IPL. I know a lot of people are saying in his last Test match he made a half century where the team really struggled, and that was in New Zealand. But that was 10 months ago. We can keep going back in time and saying, he made 200 there, 100 here, 60 there. I think the way even Gill performed on this tour, he looked, at least on the evidence of 2 first-class matches, the more in control, a little more accomplished. And then, of course, there was KL Rahul. Again, in fabulous form in the IPL. Now, I don't want to mix apples and oranges, but that was the only, form one could go by in the last 3 months. We're not talking of 10 months ago and 16 months ago. So, a bit of a surprise. Having said that, I think it's also good that they have given him some rope, a short rope for him to redeem himself. They've, put faith in a young man and saying, hey, listen, we know you're good, but if you keep failing, then I'm sorry, but this is an opportunity. Come good now. Make it your redemption song. So that's good. And the other thing is, of course, Saha. I think the choice there got into a bit of a muddle because of Pant's blistering 100. He's so attractive to watch when he gets going. But as a wicket keeper, certainly Saha is some miles ahead. And when you play a Test match against Australia in Australia, I mean, imagine if you give a guy like a Smith, or Warner's of course not there, but a Smith or a Labuschagne a life, then it makes life miserable for your team. So I think they've just done the more sensible thing. It's not a rebuke to Pant. If there was a specialist batsman spot open, he would have probably gotten as a batsman, But as a wicket-keeper batsman, not as a batsman wicket-keeper, I think the choice was Saha.
Mandira, would love to get your reaction as well. What did you make of the selection decisions?
I agree very much with Ayaz. I think KL Rahul must be very, very disappointed. Like Ayaz said, he's absolutely right. The only form we have to look at is the IPL form, because that was the first tournament where everybody played after so long. And KL Rahul's teammate was Mayank Agarwal, and they played so well together. Sorry, give me a... Excuse me, sorry for that. So definitely KL Rahul, I think, should have got a look in instead of Prithvi Shaw. Outside of that, even Wriddhiman Saha, going by his IPL form, he turned out to be a match winner. And Rishabh Pant, on the other hand, was comparatively sloppy, So no surprises there. I would have had my money on Wriddhiman Saha any day. But like I said, like I also say, this is Virat's only test for this series. He's going after this for his paternity leave. So it's very, very important for the Indian team to put their best/most experienced 11 ahead for this match. Also, don't forget, it's India's second ever pink ball test. So lots of variables out there. Australia, on the other hand, has won all 7 that it's played before. So
that's right.
There's lots to look out for, and very, very obviously interesting match ahead. And like you said, we've been cricket punditing since the IPL. This is definitely the finale for this year, and what better way to end it?
Absolutely. Mandira and Ayaz both leading the Cricket Pundit brigade by example. Ayaz, this is just my conjecture, so this might make absolutely no sense. But do you think a lack of fitness perhaps may have cost Pant a place in the side? Because you did see Pant having put on a bit of weight during the IPL, especially around his girth. Do you think, given the fact that, India has pretty high standards when it comes to fitness, a lack of fitness perhaps may have prompted the Indian team to have selected Saha over Pant?
Well, I mean, there are obviously many factors. So the fact is that Pant was not in the white ball series at all. He was not in those squads. He was only in the Test squad. So obviously fitness played an issue there, because why would you keep Pant out of a ODI or a T20 match,
Right.
Of all players? But having said that, I think, look, just about a year back, I think it was Virat Kohli who said that Ridhiman Saha is the best wicketkeeper in the world.
That's right.
So, the faith is in the wicket keeping abilities. See, the confusion arises because Pant is, considered a special talent because of his batting. While Ridhiman Saha's, credentials are more linked to his wicket keeping. And now, of course, his vast experience. And also the fact, as Mandira highlighted, that he was in very good form in the IPL. Didn't play all the matches
That's right.
because Johnny Bairstow was there playing for Hyderabad. And then he came here. He made a half century in the first match or the first warm up match. He didn't play in the second. So he's done everything that was expected of him, and rightfully, then he should be considered as the wicketkeeper batsman. Now, if you're in a ODI or a T20 scenario, you might choose a batsman wicketkeeper, like it happens with Rahul. But here you have to choose a wicketkeeper batsman because a 5-day game dynamics are far different.
Absolutely. And Mandira, what did you make of the batting order? Like on paper, does that batting order look strong enough to you? So you have Prithvi Shaw, Mayank Agarwal, Cheteshwar Pujara, Virat Kohli, Ajinkya Rahane, Hanuma Vihari, Ridhiman Saha, and then Ravichandran Ashwin, who can bat a bit. Do you think that's robust enough according to you? Mandira might be on mute right now.
Sorry, my apologies. I've just home. My kids all over the place. Everything's all over the place. So I'm going to keep muting. Trying to make sure it's not one big family drama that goes on the Pundits show. Yes, I think the batting lineup is pretty strong and formidable, and I think we have a fighting chance. I think our pace attack is formidable as well. Ashwin is in as the lone spinner for this one, but I think he's got enough experience and ability, to trouble the Aussies whenever the team requires him to. As far as the opening is concerned, a bit concerned about Prithvi Shaw for sure. Will he be able to switch modes that easily also? Like from the shorter format to the test format, it takes a lot of experience to be able to understand, how to stay in and how to play, etc. So of course, all of them are batsmen of the highest caliber, but I don't have that much confidence in Shaw versus say a KL Rahul. That the opening stand is a little bit of a concern for me, but that worry is short-lived because hopefully from the third match we'll have Rohit Sharma back, and then party's on. But yeah, outside of that, I think it's a good batting order.
So just to add something here,
Anubhav,
just to add, when we talk of KL Rahul and Prithvi Shaw, I think it's instructive for Prithvi Shaw because KL Rahul has got 4-5 test centuries. He started playing test matches in 2014-15 in Australia, where he did quite well, and he was touted as the next big thing after Kohli, and then he lost his place in the test team. So I think there's a message there for even Prithvi Shaw that however gifted you may be, ultimately it's your scores that matter. If in the scorebook you're making 20 runs and 30 runs almost every time you are out there to bat and not making the big scores, then somebody else will replace you. And that's what's happened with Rahul. I mean, he's in the test squad, but he doesn't have a test place. So he's fighting to come back. Prithvi has got a place there. It should be his job, or it should be incumbent on him to consolidate his place and make it, cement it so that nobody else takes his place. He's only 22. He's got 10, 12, 14 years of cricket ahead of him.
And so I'm guessing it would be very fair for us to say that if Prithvi Shaw doesn't capitalize on this opportunity that he's been given in the first test match, say gets out cheaply in the first innings and the second innings, he definitely will be replaced for the rest of the series.
I wouldn't know because Rohit is coming only in the third test.
Yeah.
So, you can't have a Gill coming in or somebody or a Rahul, and then, once Rohit comes, that person also leaves. You can't. Maybe they've spoken to Prithvi and said, listen, you got 2 matches to establish yourself. Otherwise, we've got Rohit coming in, and in any case, once Rohit comes in, suppose Prithvi makes runs, there's going to be a problem of plenty then. So, which is good. Which is a good dilemma to have.
Ravi Shastri's been saying I want the boys to go out and have fun, and I have a lot of confidence in my pace attack and all of that. Despite all of this, and obviously required bravado, and we, as we should, go out and have fun and all of that. How much pressure is there really going to be for to perform really well in the Adelaide test outside of the obvious one to say if you get a win first, then you're on a flying start.
So it operates, in my opinion, it will operate at two levels. One is at the individual level because, I mean, look at it from a point of view of a Kohli or a Smith or Cummins or Bumrah. I mean, these guys have tremendous pride in their own performances and the record, the body of work that they've accomplished. And you don't want to kind of make it look hollow or shallow because you say, I'm going back after one test match. Mere ko kya fark padta? It doesn't work like that.
Right.
So that's one thing. That's the senior pros and the big guns. There are others like, who are getting it. I mean, Mayank Agarwal, he wants to lay claim to being a long-term solution as an opening batsman. So too Prithvi. There's the third category of a guy who's been hovering. He's been in and out a bit, not having actualized what everybody thought was his potential, which is like an Ajinkya Rahane. 3 years back, he looked like your best batsman along with Virat, and somebody who would make as many runs, but he's kind of not lived up to that expectation. Then there is the team expectation. You were winner. You won the series last time. Now there is obviously going to be a setback. There has been a setback. There's no Rohit in the first test match or the first two, and then Virat is going away. So it's a big dhakka to the batting and a jhatka. So if you reconcile yourself to say, from now we'll become becharas and say, humko to harna hi tha, you'll lose all four. You'll lose all four.
Exactly. And speaking of dhakkas, let's not forget we are in the midst of pandemic. Hai to COVID hi na. That's the biggest dhakka.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot. So look, you asked Mandela about the lineup and all that. I think right now both teams look even Stevens to me on paper. The advantage for Australia is they're playing at home. They've got a fantastic record at Adelaide and in night test cricket. But there's no David Warner. They don't have a settled opening pair. Then they've got, they've got a bit of a dilemma. I mean, Mitchell Starc is their best bowler by far under lights in Test cricket, but they don't know whether they've got a place for him. If they play Lyons and Cummins and Josh Hazelwood and Pattinson, and they've also got Cameron Green. So will Mitchell Starc play, and who do they leave out? So they've also got some challenges.
Absolutely. Very relevant points that you bring up. I asked Mandira, both of you alluded to this. Of course, this is night cricket that we're playing right now. India just playing the second ever night test match. Australia having played won 7 out of 7. As Mandira pointed out, 4 of the 7 victories coming at the Adelaide Oval. So Australia definitely more experienced with the white ball, with the pink ball format. I ask, coming to you, how does the situation change? Because typically when you're playing test match cricket, when you walk out to bat at 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, they say you have to be fairly cautious when you're starting out, right? Because the ball does a fair bit. But in this case, I'm guessing the opposite happens, right? You can afford to be a bit more aggressive, relatively speaking, when you're starting out, only because the ball starts nipping in the air once the lights come on, once it's dusk outside. So how does the strategy change from a batting perspective?
Well, you put it, why it should change, and therefore you can't play by conventional cricket logic alone, which is that be cautious, play out the 10, 12, 15 overs with the new ball, and then build from there. And as you go on playing through the day, pitch gets better and better, or the batting gets better and better, unless the conditions are overcast and all. But here, approaching twilight, and after that, the ball starts doing things. And it's been now, sufficient data to tell us, yes, it does happen. Why it happens and all that, somebody in physics and aerodynamics will tell us. It's to do with the ball, a slightly more depressed seam compared to the usual red ball, which has a more pronounced seam. I saw the first ever day-night match between Australia and New Zealand. I was in Adelaide. Wow. And even last session, 5 or 6 wickets would fall. And in fact, Australia won that match in 3 days. Just cleaned up. Mitchell Starc was the hero for them. So things do happen. And that's something that by now, both teams know it. And how they prepared for it is the challenge. In terms of technique, in terms of mindset, in terms of even their own bowlers. Have they acquired those skills to do unto Australia what Australia will do unto you? Can Bumrah and Shami do?
Yeah. Sorry. I thought you'd say even the India-Australia rivalry has taken a life of its own.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And that comes out the best during Test cricket. So I'm going to be smacking my lips.
I'll tell you something about Indo-Australia rivalry, Mandira, and this is something that, so Ricky Ponting is coach of Delhi Capitals now, right? For whom Prithvi Shaw plays, etc., etc. But he's also an advisor and all kinds of stuff in Cricket Australia.
Right.
वो जाके सब पोल खोल देगा पृथ्वी शॉ को कैसा हैरान करना है.
उसको ऐसे खिलाओ, उसको ऐसे करो.
Tom Moody is now going to be the director of Hyderabad the franchise, and so on. No, I'm just saying that the Aussies are in big demand in the Indian Premier League for good reason, because they play very good, very tough, very competitive cricket, and they go through these coaching, in the qualifications. But they also get deep insights into all our players.
And speaking of the Aussies, the one name that we can't get our eyes off is Steve Smith. Of course, had an injury scare yesterday, didn't come out to bat, but I believe he's fit and in all probability will be playing the first Test match. Mandara, if you're Virat Kohli, what do you do? How do you counter against someone like a Steve Smith?
Oh my God. I'm going to ask you to deflect that question straight to Ayaz. His experience is
take him for an interview. Take him for an interview to some other room, like we've seen it's been happening. Let the other guys play and make sure that he doesn't come back. No, but more seriously, look, I think he's been a bugbear for the Indian bowlers. We saw what happened in 2014 in Australia when he and Kohli were in that race for who makes more runs. And then we saw him also against India in India, where he played fabulously on, rank turners on very devilish pitches, if I might put it like that. And then we saw him in the Ashes, and then, he's just a run machine. And he's got a technique all his own. He's got, I think that it's difficult to work out a formula to keep him or get him out cheaply. It's very difficult in my opinion. Otherwise, by now, bowlers would have been doing it. I think you have to try and, like all great batsmen, they don't like to be kept quiet for too long. So if you can keep a Kohli, then he has to somehow, stamp his authority and try and dominate. Likewise, a Steve Smith or a David Warner. I mean, the big guns, So you have to ensure that they take the risk to play that attacking stroke, and maybe, therefore, the percentage shifts in favor of the bowler. But otherwise, maybe a run out. A very early run out.
Or maybe a few words whispered under his breath. Steadily.
I believe this will be the first time Steve Smith will be facing Jasprit Bumrah in Test matches. Do you think that might be a novel experience for him, that might perhaps unsettle him to some extent?
Well, it will be a novel experience for all of us, including spectators and all people like us who will be watching the game, because there's so much, hinges on this rivalry. Though I think actually equally important. This is the high drama of Test cricket. Smith versus Bumrah, and Kohli versus, Cummins and Pattinson and all. But in my opinion, what is going to be more decisive in the series, not just at Adelaide, is how the Indian batsmen fare against the Aussie bowlers. If they don't make 380, 400, 420, then Bumrah and Shami can't defend 175, 200, on those pitches against those batsmen. So really, for India to succeed, last time, Cheteshwar Pujara was exceptional. Right. He made 500 plus runs. And India looked stronger in batting because of him and, of course, Kohli, but also because Smith and Warner weren't there. Now Smith is back. They found somebody called Labuschagne, who's been a terrific find. And then Warner comes back from the second test. So they've got the batting arsenal. Do we have enough runs on the board for Bumrah and Shami and Umesh Yadav and Ashwin to defend the scores is going to be the big issue.
Especially after Kohli leaves.
And after Kohli leaves, of course.
And in many ways, you can say the first Test match of a series often sets the tone for the series. Mandara, is this India's best chance of winning? Because you have Kohli. Kohli leaves after the first Test match. As you mentioned, David Warner out for the first Test match. If India can actually go one up after the first Test match, then who knows? Even without Kohli, India might have the momentum, the confidence to actually finish the series on a strong note. So India, I'm guessing, must be looking to capitalize on this first Test match.
Most certainly. Also, don't forget, like the last time when it was under Kohli's captaincy that India won its first ever Test series in Australia. That accolade in itself is such a confidence booster to know you've done it before, and of course you can do it again. The only chink that's missing in our armor is Rohit Sharma, sadly. But who knows? You got young blood. You've got players desperate to make a place for themselves. Look, India is a team where you've got enough people waiting in the wings, to come and take your place. So I think a victory here would be astounding, a great start. Definitely doesn't mean all the work done. But of course, they'll be looking to seal a win first. And I think we have a side that totally can. And yes, with Virat Kohli here, he'll also be anxious to set the right tone before he heads out. So yes, that is my answer to your question.
Absolutely. I asked, and I'm guessing you can expect high voltage, high octane cricket from India. Comes from the captain, Virat Kohli. That's his aggressive nature. So India definitely won't be subdued, even though they might be playing against Australia in a fairly packed Australian lineup.
No, certainly not. I think, there's a lot at stake for Virat, even now, in the one test match that he plays at a personal level to score runs against a high quality attack, perhaps the best attack in the world currently in test cricket. And then, of course, to lead what is perhaps an equally good attack and try and win the test match. So on both fronts, I think he's got a challenging time ahead. And as Mandala mentioned, I mean, you win the first test, you get a momentum, and even if Virat is not there, hey, look, some of these guys, Rahane, Rohit when he comes in, Shami, Bumrah also. I mean, now I did an interview with Rahul Dravid very recently in the last month on another platform. So one of the things he mentioned, he said we keep talking about the experience of players, but experience does not mean 10 years. Some guys get huge experience in 7 or 8 matches because they just keep learning so much from their experiences. It just builds up. Some guys don't learn, so they may take 7, 8, 10 years to reach the same level. So I mean, a guy like Bumrah, he's been about 3 years in Test cricket, started in 2017-18. But he's today acknowledged as amongst the best because he's such a sharp learner. He's such a fabulous, he's just the fabulous progress he's made because he's got it in his mind how to go about mapping his career. So I think that India has got a lot of Ashwin, I mean, he's got loads of experience. Shami, Ajinkya Rahane, these guys, Riddhiman Saha, these guys have got loads of experience. Experience is not the issue now. The loss of a talent like Virat Kohli will be an issue. Of course, you can't run away from that. But I think that even if he is gone, you have to take it on the chin, that blow, and say, hey, we are here to win the series, And in that context, if you do well in Adelaide, I think he'll just be like a great booster shot. I didn't want to say steroid because it's banned. You shouldn't take steroids, but it'll be a good booster shot for the Indian team.
Also, as Virat Kohli goes, I think I'm really interested to see Ajinkya Rahane come into his own. As captain, also he's such a talented batsman, and he'll have to shoulder more responsibility. And also, the test side is so strongly held together by Cheteshwar Pujara, and these guys will have to take more responsibility and see it through. So it's very, very interesting, and sometimes gets predictable when you have the usual suspects all the time, whether it's Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli. So this little variation, I think, won't be a bad thing.
So Anubhav, if you look at, apart from what happened in New Zealand 10, 12 months back when we went there, and we got, bambooed in both the matches. If you look at the last 3 years, the overseas series that you played in South Africa, where we lost 1-2, in England, where we lost 1-4, in Australia, we actually won 2-1. I'm not counting West Indies and all because they are easy teams to beat now. But these 3 teams, which are very difficult to beat, in all these matches, the Indian bowlers used to pick up 20 wickets every time.
Right.
It is the batting which failed you, barring a Virat in South Africa or a Virat in England, where he performed fabulously, 500 plus runs, or a Cheteshwar Pujara and with some support from Virat in Australia. So if the batting comes good, if you make 400 plus runs, my gut is you give 400, 450 to Bumrah, Shami and gang, they will turn huge amounts of pressure on the Aussie batting.
Absolutely. In fact, Kohli's gone, on public record, having said that even if the Indian batsmen can actually put a total of 250 on the board, I feel I have enough confidence in my bowlers to actually defend a total of 250. That's how much confidence he has in his bowlers.
That is Kohli. This is Ayaz. I say 425. He says 250.
I asked, talking about the 3 series, right? You spoke about the South Africa series. When we went to South Africa, we lost 2-1. You spoke about the England series, we lost 4-1, and then the Australia series when we won. Virat Kohli has mentioned that even amongst the test matches that we lost, apart from the one at Lords where we got convincingly beaten, which was the second test match in India's tour of England, he said that the test matches have been fairly close, and it's boiled down to one poor session that's actually cost India the test match. So what happens is it perhaps a lack of experience sometimes when, in a pressure situation, when it's 50-50, it all of a sudden sways in the opposition team's favor. You don't quite have the character to actually, hold your ground. What happens there? And did we see a different mentality in Australia such that, when we saw those 50-50 situations, India was able to actually come out on top as opposed to, lose the plot even when things were hung in the balance?
Yeah, so I think it's not just it's not about talent alone. Of course, as we all know in sport, and especially in Test cricket, when it's over a longer duration, 5 days, it's more to do with temperament and to do with determination. And I think it's not just about experience alone. A young Gavaskar in his first series made 774 runs. Mm-hmm. It's a record which still stands. And against the mighty West Indies. West Indies used to be a mighty team in 71. It's to do with focus. It's to do with concentration. It's to do with diligence. It's to do with rigor of playing Test cricket. That is something that is acquired. Everybody is not as naturally gifted as a Virat Kohli, or a Steve Smith. I'm talking of batsmen. So Cheteshwar Pujara has to go and grind out the runs. So that's the application he has to show. So if some of the younger players don't show that application, it means they're not learning, or they have not been able to segregate, compartmentalize their minds between T20, ODIs and Test cricket, because there are different demands. And for bowlers also, I think we've been blessed that the bowlers have been able to adjust and adapt rather quickly.
Yeah.
Even in his first series, Bumrah bowled like a veteran. And by the third series, he was being, ye to world ka best bowler ho gaya. So
Right.
So that's what it is. I think it also depends on the individual to a great extent, how much you value your own performance. Also the team culture, the team ethos, how much emphasis is given. So I think the good thing I like about this team has been that it's quite spirited. The spirit is pretty high. Otherwise, when the two matches were lost, first two ODIs, our hearts sank and we said, "It's a clean sweep ho jayega. We lose the ODIs, we lose the T20s, and we lose the Test matches." But the team came back strongly. Different formats. We'll have to wait and see how they perform in Tests. But they did come and push Australia back onto the back foot. And that was a good sign. And if that continues, then you may win. It could be a result 2-1 in Australia's favor. I hope. If you have to lose, that's the scoreline. Yeah. Or if you win 2-1, that'll be great. But the effort should be to be really competitive for about a month.
Yeah.
And that requires a lot of mental toughness and concentration.
Right.
Especially
you spoke
about,
Yeah.
Absolutely. You spoke about being spirited and being optimistic. We'll come to the eternal optimist. Mandira, as a neutral, your prediction for this series, as a complete neutral.
How can I be neutral?
As hard as that may be.
No, God. Okay. Australia, home ground advantage. More experience in this form of the pink ball Test cricket with this day-night Test cricket, right? But David Warner out, Steve Smith also kind of prone to injury. A lot of upheaval in their playing 11 as well. India, on the other hand, at the back of a T20 series win, whatever it may be, it's a win. Then Virat Kohli's Test before he goes for his paternity leave. A good playing 11, barring just that opening glitch thoda sa. I think they're fairly evenly matched on paper, honestly. Australia has a massive home ground advantage, and if anything, that will swing it in their favor. But I think if you were just to put it as two teams with an absolutely level playing field, they'd genuinely be evenly matched. And obviously, because I'm the optimist and I'm such a patriot, I would say India has the upper hand. But I'm sitting firmly on the fence here in terms of a proper prediction because it could go anyway.
Beautifully analyzed. Ayaz, your take on how you see this series panning out?
So I'm seeing it differently. Not differently from Mandira, pretty much agreeing with what she's saying, but I'm seeing it as two contests. One is the Adelaide contest.
Yeah.
By itself, for different conditions, this, that, and the other, and all the things, the factors that go to make day-night Test match cricket on the pink ball different from the regular red ball cricket. And then there are the other three Test matches. Of course, one impacts the other. If you win the first match, then it'll have a positive impact on the other three. If you lose, then it could have a deleterious impact. But the challenge is of getting past that first Test match in Adelaide, where Australia have a fabulous record. That is the challenge for India up front. I think everything else should be shunted out of the mind the rest of the series and say, "Pehle yahan pe, either give it back to them in their own coin. We've got the bowling power, firepower. I keep coming back to the batting because I think that's really the crux. If India's batting clicks, then I suspect, or the Aussies will start fearing the Indian bowlers immediately in the Adelaide Test itself."
Fantastic. And, apart from the delicious cricket that we watch whenever India and Australia are playing each other, we see a fair bit of banter, a fair bit of sledging as well. We saw that in the 2018 series. So Pulkit Sankla here asking us, with the break from a pandemic, do you think the sledging and the rivalry would be comparatively less in this series? There's been a lot made of the interactions between the Indian and the Aussie players in the recent past. We saw in the ODI series, the T20I series, people saying, "Go on, lad, well played, go do well, youngster." So people being too nice to each other. Should we expect a lot more banter in the Test series?
I think so. I don't think, I think the competitive juices flow once you're wearing the India colours or the Aussie colours, and why not? I think some banter is really good for the game. It's just makes it so attractive, Yeah. Imagine if Steve Smith is coming out to bat and Virat Kohli goes up to him and touzles his hair and, kind of shakes his hand and gives him a little bus on the cheek and say, "Welcome back to Test cricket against us." I mean, it's if he was not doing what he does when we lip read him, then fire kya hai?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no power without that fire, no chance. They might be slightly well behaved,
That's fine. Don't take it beyond the point. Yeah,
but I think it's a must that banter is essential to Test cricket.
Absolutely. I still remember Virat Kohli giving it back to Joe Root. I think this was the first Test match when India toured England, and Virat Kohli got him run out, after which he did the mic drop celebration, which Joe Root had done in the previous series after scoring 100. I believe this was against Australia. But Virat Kohli, giving it back to him on the first day of that series.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure we'll be watching fireworks, not just on the field with the bat and the ball, but also in terms of the linguistics that we see on the field. We're certainly extremely excited for everything that we have in store with the first Test match that starts tomorrow at the Adelaide Oval. Remember, it's a day-night Test match, as we talked about. And stay tuned on our One Play Sports networks throughout the course of this series. We'll be talking about the key talking points, highlights that are stemming from each day's play. And we look forward to your company throughout the course of this Aussie summer, all the way until the 15th of January. Thank you so much to Mandira. Thank you so much to Ayaz. And a big thank you to you again for having given us company for this episode. But do join us again for future episodes as well. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.